There are some decisions we make in life that change everything. Decisions made in moments of desperation, loneliness, or blind hope. And sometimes, what looks like a blessing can become something you never imagined. In a quiet village in Enugu State, a woman named Chioma made such a decision. She married a man who seemed perfect in every way. Too perfect. And by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late. What happened next would challenge everything she believed about love, faith, and the world beyond what we can see. This is her story, a story that will make you question whether some doors, once opened, can ever truly be closed again. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Chioma Okafor was 32 years old when her mother sat her down for the conversation she'd been dreading for years. They were in their small compound in Nsukka, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the red earth. Her mother's face carried that particular expression that mothers wear when they've run out of patience with gentleness. "Every woman in this family has married before 30, her mother said, her voice tight with worry and something else, something that sounded like fear. Your sisters, your cousins, even your younger cousin Amara, who is only 25. What are we going to tell people, Chioma? What are we going to say when they ask why you're still in this house?" Chioma had heard variations of this speech before, but today it landed differently. Today she felt the weight of it in her bones. She was a teacher at the local secondary school, respected, independent, but in her mother's eyes and in the eyes of their community, she was incomplete. A woman without a husband was a story without an ending. That night, lying on her bed and listening to the sounds of the compound settling into sleep, Chioma made a decision. She would accept the next serious suitor who came, no matter what. She was tired of the pitying looks, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room, the way even younger women now spoke to her with a kind of condescending sympathy. She didn't know it then, but that decision would change the course of her entire life. 3 weeks later, she met Obinna. He appeared at her school on a Tuesday afternoon, claiming to be the uncle of one of her students. He was tall, well-dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers, with a smile that seemed to light up the dim corridor where they first spoke. His voice was smooth, educated, the kind of voice that commanded attention without demanding it. "I wanted to thank you personally," he said, "for the extra attention you've given my nephew Chidi. His grades have improved tremendously." Chioma felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to this kind of direct appreciation. They talked for 20 minutes, standing in that corridor, and by the time he left, he had asked for her phone number. She gave it without hesitation. Over the next month, Obinna courted her with an intensity that was both flattering and overwhelming. He called every evening at exactly 7 o'clock. He sent thoughtful gifts, not expensive things that would make her uncomfortable, but books he thought she'd enjoy, a scarf in her favorite color that he somehow knew without asking. He listened when she spoke about her students, her dreams of maybe writing a book someday, her complicated relationship with her family's expectations. He seemed to understand everything. When he took her to meet his family in what he said was his hometown of Owerri, they welcomed her like she was already part of them. His mother hugged her, his sisters asked about her work with genuine interest, and his father, a distinguished-looking man with gray in his beard, told her she had kind eyes. Everything felt right. Everything felt meant to be. The wedding happened fast, perhaps too fast, but Chioma's mother was so relieved and happy that no one questioned it. It was a beautiful ceremony in Nsukka, with palm wine and traditional dancers, with her friends crying happy tears and her mother beaming with pride. Obinna looked at her during their vows with such devotion that she felt beautiful in a way she'd never felt before. That night, as they drove to their new home in a suburb of Enugu City, Chioma felt like her life was finally beginning. She was someone's wife now. She belonged. But as they pulled up to the house, a large, surprisingly isolated compound, surrounded by tall walls and thick vegetation, she felt the first whisper of something she couldn't quite name. Not fear exactly, but a kind of unease that prickled at the back of her neck. The house was beautiful inside, furnished with taste and obvious wealth, but it was so quiet, too quiet. "Where are the neighbors?" she asked as Obinna carried her over the threshold. He smiled that perfect smile. "We value our privacy here," he said. "You'll come to appreciate it." And for the first few weeks, she did appreciate it. Obinna was an attentive husband, affectionate and considerate. He left for work early each morning, though she noticed he never quite explained what his business was. He returned each evening with that same warm smile, asking about her day, cooking elaborate meals that he said his mother taught him to make. But slowly, small things began to feel wrong. The house had no mirrors, not in the bathroom, not in the bedroom, nowhere. When she asked about it, Obinna said he'd never been vain enough to need them, that he'd have some installed if she wanted. But weeks passed and no mirrors appeared. The neighborhood remained eerily empty. She never saw another person on their street, never heard children playing or neighbors arguing or any of the normal sounds of life. When she mentioned visiting her family, Obinna's face would tighten almost imperceptibly, and he'd suggest they wait a little longer, let them settle into married life first. His family, who had been so warm before the wedding, never visited and seemed always unavailable when she suggested they go to a weri. And then there were the nights. 3 nights a week, sometimes 4, Obinna would wait until she was asleep and then slip out of bed. The first time Chioma woke to find him gone, she went looking for him, worry churning in her stomach. She found him in the backyard, standing perfectly still in the darkness, his face turned up to the sky. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, and something about the absolute stillness of him made her retreat back to bed without calling out. When she asked him about it the next morning, he said he sometimes had trouble sleeping, that the night air helped him think. It was a reasonable explanation, but it didn't explain why, on those nights when she pretended to sleep and watched him through half-closed eyes, she could swear he seemed to shimmer in the darkness, his outline becoming less solid, less human. 4 months into their marriage, Chioma decided to surprise Obinna at his office. He'd mentioned it was in the industrial area of Enugu, though he'd never given her the exact address. She asked around, described his business as he'd vaguely outlined it, but no one had heard of it. No one knew an Obinna who worked in that area. The unease that had been growing in her chest bloomed into something colder. That evening, she confronted him directly. "Where do you actually work, Obinna? Where do you go every day?" His face remained calm, but something flickered in his eyes, something that made her stomach drop. "I work for a private firm," he said smoothly. "Very private. They don't advertise, and most people wouldn't know about them." It wasn't really an answer, and they both knew it. That night was the first night Chioma couldn't sleep at all. She lay in bed, her husband's breathing steady beside her, and she let herself think the thoughts she'd been pushing away for weeks. Why had his family disappeared after the wedding? Why had none of his supposed relatives or friends come to visit them? Why did the house feel less like a home and more like a beautiful cage? And why, when she looked at Obinna sometimes in unguarded moments, did she feel like she was looking at something wearing a man's face rather than a man himself? At 2 in the morning, she made a decision. She would call her friend Ngozi, who worked at the registry office, and ask her to look up Obinna's records. She would visit his supposed hometown herself, find his family, get real answers. She would take control of her own story again. But Obinna knew. Somehow, he knew. The next morning, before she can even reach for her phone, he sat her down and said they needed to talk. His voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath it now. "You've been questioning things," he said. It wasn't a question. "You've been doubting. I had hoped we could go longer before this conversation, but I see now that you need the truth." Chioma's heart hammered in her chest. Part of her wanted to run, but a larger part needed to hear what he would say. Obinna stood and walked to the window, his back to her. When he spoke again, his voice was different, older somehow, weighted with something beyond the 4 months she'd known him. "I am not what you think I am, Chioma. The family you met, the history I told you, the life I presented, it was all constructed, carefully, lovingly, but constructed nonetheless. I am something else, something that exists between your world and another. We have many names in many cultures.
but you would know my kind from the stories your grandmother told, the ones about the spirits who walk among humans, who sometimes love them, who sometimes marry them." The room seemed to tilt. Chioma heard herself laugh, a high, strained sound. "This is ridiculous! You're trying to frighten me! Why? What kind of game is this?" But even as she said it, things were clicking into place. The lack of reflection, the isolation, the way he seemed to shimmer at night, the too perfect courtship that had swept her off her feet before she could think clearly. Obinna turned to face her, and for just a moment, just a heartbeat, she saw him as he truly was. Not quite solid, not quite real, beautiful and terrible at once. Then he was human again, or wearing human shape, and there were tears in his eyes. "It's not a game," he said softly. "I loved you. I watched you for months before I approached you, saw your kindness, your loneliness, your strength. I wanted to give you what you desired most, a husband, a home, safety, love, all of it real in its own way." Chioma stood on shaking legs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where would she run to? This was her home now, legally, publicly. She'd announced this marriage to everyone she knew. She'd braided her life into his, or into the illusion of his. "What happens now?" she whispered. Obinna moved toward her slowly, carefully, like she was a wild thing that might bolt. "Now you choose," he said. "I won't keep you here against your will. I never intended to trap you, Chioma. You can leave. I'll help you construct a story your family and friends will believe. A tragic separation, an incompatibility discovered, whatever you need. You can go back to your life, and I'll disappear. Or," he paused, and the weight of that unfinished sentence hung between them. "Or what?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Or you stay. You accept what I am and build a life with me anyway. I can't give you children, not human ones. I can't give you the normal life you might have had with a human husband, but I can give you love, protection, a home where you're cherished. I can give you a kind of magic most people never experience. And I promise you, Chioma, I will never lie to you again. No more illusions, just truth, however strange it might be." She should have run. Any sensible person would have run. But standing there, looking at this creature who wore her husband's face, Chioma realized something that frightened her more than any supernatural revelation. Part of her wanted to stay, not because she was scared or trapped, but because in the 4 months of their marriage, she'd felt more seen, more valued, more loved than she had in all the years before, even if it was love from something not quite human. What would you do in that moment if you discovered that the person you married, the person you'd built your hopes around, wasn't human at all? Would you run back to the safety of the world you knew, even if that world had made you feel invisible and unwanted? Or would you step into the unknown, into a love that defied everything you'd been taught about what was possible and real? Chioma stood at that crossroads for a long time, her mind racing through options, through fears, through desires she'd never admitted even to herself. Finally, she asked the question that mattered most. "Do you truly love me, Obinna? Not the idea of me, not what I represent, but me?" He met her eyes, and she saw no deception there, only a profound sadness and an equally profound hope. "I do," he said, "in ways my kind aren't supposed to be capable of. That's why I risked everything to have this time with you. That's why I'm giving you the choice now, even if it might losing you." Chioma thought about her mother's face when she'd announced her engagement, the pure relief and joy there. She thought about her friends' envy at her beautiful wedding, at finally being the bride instead of the eternal guest. She thought about how she felt incomplete for so long, like she was waiting for her real life to begin. And then she thought about the last 4 months, the quiet dinners, the conversations about books and dreams, the way he listened to her stories about difficult students with genuine interest, the way he'd held her when she cried about her father's death anniversary, not trying to fix her sadness, but simply being present with it. Magic or not, human or not, those moments had been real. The love had been real.
6 months later, Chioma still lived in the house behind the high walls. She'd made her choice, though she'd told no one the full truth of it. To her family, she was happily married, perhaps a bit isolated, but that was common enough in modern marriages. To her friends, she'd simply gotten busy with married life and gradually drifted away, as people sometimes do. The truth was stranger and more complicated than any of them could imagine. She lived with a being who was not human, who existed in ways she was still learning to understand. There were rules to their life together, boundaries between his world and hers that had to be maintained. She learned not to ask where he went on certain nights when the veil between worlds grew thin. She learned which questions had answers and which open doors better left closed. But she also learned that love could exist in forms she'd never imagined. Obinna kept his promise. No more lies, no more illusions. He showed her wonders that existed just beyond normal human perception, taught her to see the world as layered and complex, full of beings and forces most people never suspected. And in return, she gave him something his kind rarely experienced: genuine human connection, acceptance, a home in both meanings of the word. Was she happy? That was a question Chioma asked herself often in those quiet moments when Obinna was away and she was alone with her thoughts. The answer wasn't simple. She'd traded one kind of life for another, certainty for mystery, normalcy for something that existed outside all the rules she'd been taught. She couldn't share her real life with her family or old friends. She'd given up the possibility of children, of growing old in the traditional way, of being fully part of the human world she'd been born into. But when Obinna came home each evening and looked at her with those eyes that held centuries of existence and yet still softened with love just for her, when he asked about her day and listened like her small concerns mattered in the vast scheme of things he'd witnessed, when he held her in the darkness and she felt safe in ways that had nothing to do with physical protection and everything to do with being truly known, in those moments, yes, she was happy. She was happy in a way she'd never been when she was trying to fit herself into the shape of what everyone else thought her life should be. One evening, almost a year after the revelation, Chioma sat in their garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Obinna sat beside her, his hand warm in hers, and she thought about all the women she'd known who'd married for the right reasons to the right kind of men, who'd built the lives they were supposed to build and who still felt empty inside. She thought about her mother's marriage, her sister's marriages, the compromises and quiet disappointments that everyone accepted as just part of life. And she thought about her own choice, the one everyone would think was wrong if they knew the truth. She'd married someone who wasn't human. She'd chosen a love that existed outside all normal boundaries. She'd walked away from the safe, approved path and stepped into something wild and unknown. And maybe that made her foolish. Maybe that made her crazy. Or maybe, just maybe, it made her the bravest person she knew.
"What are you thinking about?" Obinna asked, his voice gentle in the gathering dusk. Chioma squeezed his hand and smiled. "I'm thinking about choices," she said, "and about how the things we're told we should want aren't always the things that make us whole." He understood, as he always did. They sat together in comfortable silence as night fell around them. A human woman and a spirit being, living a life that shouldn't exist according to every rule either of their worlds had written. But it did exist, it was real, and it was theirs. Sometimes the doors we're afraid to walk through are the ones that lead to the truest versions of ourselves. Sometimes the love we're taught to fear is the love that finally makes us feel fully alive. Chioma had learned that the hard way, through confusion and fear, and a leap of faith that defied everything she'd been raised to believe. And she wouldn't change it, not for anything, not for anyone, because she'd found something most people spend their whole lives searching for. She'd found someone who loved her, not for what she could be or should be, but for exactly who she was, even if that someone wasn't quite human, especially because that someone wasn't quite human. So let me ask you,
What would you have done? If you discovered your perfect partner was something beyond human, would you have run or would you have stayed? Do you think Chioma was brave or foolish? And how many of us are living in cages of expectation, too afraid to open the doors that might lead to our truest happiness? Think about it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you would do if you were in Chioma's place. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you think this story was unbelievable, wait till you hear what happened in our next folktale. Stories that will touch your heart and keep you thinking long after the video ends. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that don't follow any rules at all.